He started talking about the elections also under pressure from the American colleagues. There's some kind of double meaning. He talks about elections, but what he really wants is to use this to achieve what he and the Europeans desire. A ceasefire, that is, a halt to hostilities for some time, after which they will resume again. None of this will work out for him. As for Crimea, it's absolutely ironclad, 1,000,000% that it won't work. And regarding NATO, I also think it's 1,000,000% that it won't work.
1,000,000%. Zelensky cannot return Crimea or join NATO. Vladimir Putin's aide Ushakov makes bombshell statement. Russia also alleges big plot amid talks for truce with Ukraine.
But I think that the contribution of both Ukrainians and Europeans to these documents is unlikely to be constructive. That's the problem.
You said you haven't seen these documents yet.
Not yet.
We haven't seen them yet, but if there are any relevant amendments, we will have very strong objections because we have made our position very clear, and it seemed the Americans understood it quite well.
Strong objections to which points?
To many points. There will be some provisions that are absolutely unacceptable to us, including those concerning territorial issues. That's what I think.
Is this about what's being discussed now? The possible demilitarized zone in the Donetsk Republic? Not only that,
but the issue of territories in general. It was actively discussed here in Moscow, and the Americans not only know but also understand our position. But what they will end up with on paper after these consultations, I don't know. It's unlikely to be anything good. And
in general, is the so-called Korean scenario an option for us in terms of this kind of separation with Ukraine or not?
We have never discussed this, not even once. We discussed various options regarding a long-term settlement, and the Americans are aware of our approaches. But specifically copying the Korean scenario has never been discussed. As far as I know, not once. I've never even heard about it. He started talking about the elections also under pressure from the American colleagues. There's some kind of double meaning. He talks about elections, but what he really wants is to use this to achieve what he and the Europeans desire. A ceasefire, that is, a halt to hostilities for some time, after which they will resume again. None of this will work out for him. As for Crimea, it's absolutely ironclad, 1,000,000% that it won't work. And regarding NATO, I also think it's 1,000,000% that it won't work.
We've heard a lot of militant statements from NATO, but this time, the NATO Secretary General has outdone himself. He said that Europe needs to prepare for the same kind of war our grandfathers went through.
Well, this statement probably comes from a representative of a generation that has already forgotten what the Second World War was like. And Mr. Rutte, after all, lived in the Netherlands. I once studied in the Netherlands, and there, the Dutch themselves told me about the terrible ordeal they went through during the fascist occupation, how a few of their windows were broken, and how awful that was. It was really frightening, and they were completely serious about it. And at the same time, the Dutch really dislike the Germans for this discomfort, but they don't know what the true horrors of war are. They have no idea, and unfortunately, Mr. Rutte makes such irresponsible statements simply because he doesn't understand what he's talking about. We, thank God, grew up in a country where the memory of what happened, of how terrible it was, and of what we managed to do to save Europe from fascism is carefully preserved. Naturally, these are very sensitive topics being discussed. During such discussions, it's usually very difficult to keep track of time. At the same time, the Prime Minister of Pakistan has another meeting scheduled, but they are not planning to attend the protocol event organized by the host side, our Turkmen colleagues. We need to hurry over there.
And so, we tried to signal.
Well, yes, and so you end up with this situation, a time crunch from all sides. Right now, it's being resolved, right at this very moment.
Essentially, he ended up saying that Ukraine would be preparing for war.
Well, look, there were the Minsk agreements. There was a step-by-step plan. All the participants had signed this plan. That night, Poroshenko's signature was on it. When Zelensky won the election against Poroshenko, he came in with slogans about peace. Instead, he continued to violate the Minsk agreements. He kept stalling for time. It became obvious that no one was going to do anything. And instead of peace, he started bringing war closer with his actions along the line of contact. Back then in Donbass, on top of that, there was a direct infiltration of NATO specialists, their actual entry into Ukrainian territory, into Ukrainian government bodies, and the supply of weapons was not the first. That's when it all really started. All of this, of course, created a threat to the Russian people living in Donbass, because preparations were essentially underway for their extermination. Not to mention the geopolitical aspects of this situation, the geopolitical consequences for the security of the Russian Federation. And all of this together, of course, became the trigger for the decision to launch the special military operation.
And would it suit us if, under pressure, the Kyiv regime signs whatever, and then, just like with the Minsk agreements, sabotages everything it signs?
That won't suit us, so there must be a certain system of guarantees, not only of security, but also guarantees that the agreements will be fulfilled. And of course, Washington's position is very important here. We see that it is quite decisive, it is realistic, it is pragmatic. The Europeans are playing their own game. It still seems that they want the war to continue. But here, of course, we are primarily focused on our counterparts in Washington.
What do you mean by quietly?
Like everyone else. That is,
For example, behind the wheel, right?
well, he drives a car and enjoys it, yes.
So, for example, a car owner in Moscow could turn at a traffic light and suddenly see Putin behind the wheel right in front of them.
It's unlikely they'd see him.
Those comments came at the end of a high-pressure round of talks in Berlin, talks that are being described as a possible turning point. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff says meaningful progress was made during Sunday's meetings between senior American and Ukrainian officials as diplomatic pressure mounts to find a path toward ending Russia's war. The talks brought together Witkoff, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of U.S. President Donald Trump. Witkoff later posted on X that discussions were in-depth and that negotiators will reconvene again on December 15th, a clear sign these talks are far from over. But behind the cautious optimism, a dramatic shift in Ukraine's position. For the first time since the war began, Ukrainian President Zelensky says Kyiv is prepared to give up its long-standing ambition to join NATO, a move once considered untouchable. The statement comes as Ukrainian, American, and European officials converge in Berlin for high-stakes negotiations that could redefine the future of the conflict. For years, NATO membership sat at the heart of Ukraine's national security strategy, the ultimate guarantee against Russian aggression. Now, Zelensky says binding Western security guarantees could serve as an alternative if they carry real force. Instead of NATO's Article 5, Ukraine is seeking US-led guarantees that would mirror collective defense obligations backed by European allies, Canada, and Japan. Zelensky described the shift as a compromise, one made under pressure, but aimed at preventing another invasion. And he's drawing a firm line. These guarantees, he says, must be enforceable, not political promises, not vague assurances, but legal commitments capable of deterring Moscow. The stakes could not be higher. Supporters believe the move could unlock a diplomatic breakthrough and bring the war closer to an end. Critics warn abandoning NATO aspirations risks weakening Ukraine's long-term security and emboldening Russia. As talks resume in Berlin, all sides are now testing how much they are willing to give and how much they are willing to guarantee. After years of war, Ukraine may be trading one historic dream for another. Peace, built not on promises, but on guarantees the world has yet to prove.